Hey everybody, welcome to the Art of Comics. I'm your host, Andre Salazar. Today I'm going to do a quick spotlight on Conan, particularly this run that Dark Horse did. Now if I decided to bind a book, you know that I love it because this particular binder, actually, this was like $60 to bind this. Now it's a little pricey, but these guys are top of the line bookbinders. They do it like nobody's business. I love these guys. Anyway, so I had this bound because I had such a great time. This is when Dark Horse first got the Conan property. This is Kurt Busiek and Gary Nord. Their work, Gary Nord's and Busiek do such a great job. I loved this series. And it continued for many. This is the first 25 issues. That's about as far as you can go for these bindings. And then they continued to go on. And then this is the latest, or I don't know if it's the latest, but it's the one I have, volume 7. And now we switched over the team. No longer is Kurt writing it, but we got this guy, Timothy Truman's writing it. And I saw Richard Corbin. I'm like, oh gosh. You guys know I love Richard Corbin stuff. So I had to pick this up. So let's talk a little bit about Conan. I am not familiar much with the Savage sort of Conan, the black and white magazine format that Marvel did a while back, with some of those Filipino artists as well, I think Alex Nino and some others did that. I need to get those because I want to learn that art. I want to look at those stories. I've heard just nothing but great things. So I need to look for those magazines. So the only Conan, the movie, of course, with Schwarzenegger, huge fan of John Milius, so big fan of that script and his work. I've even read the one script that was never finished. It was Conan 3, the Iron Crown or something like that, which was pretty crazy script. Never produced. The more modern incarnations, not such a big fan. There was a video game about 5 years ago that I heard was good that I never tried, but I wanted to. But Conan is that classic swords and sandals story, right? It's that fantasy with this swords and sandals, Arabian kind of mysticism and barbarians and everything. And I just love the whole Conan world. So I just thought this series is such a great job of the comics and of the material. Now, a lot of these stories, too, were actually taken from Robert Howard's work. So they picked up some of those stories and they just translated it into comics, which gives you even more of an authentic feel as to what's happening and the kind of plot points. They're what Robert Howard wrote. So that's kind of an additional cool translation element to it. I love Carey's work because if I'm not mistaken, he just pencils it and then scans it in and then they color it from there. So there's no ink. It's all penciled and it's got kind of a watercolor painty feel to that because there's not the hard black lines, which I really actually like. I thought it was a cool effect, especially back then. It wasn't used much. Now I think it's much more commonplace. These were back in, when was this? 2005. Yeah, this is 2005. So we're talking 2004 or 5 is when these started. So it's been a while. It's been a hot minute, about 15 years. But I love that. Just great stuff. Great anatomy. Very action oriented. Just dug this to the extreme. So recently I picked this up, which is, again, one of the more modern takes. And Timothy does a great job. I like the story. It's good. You got Jose Villarrubia. He is, I met him at a couple of conventions. He's a great guy, too. I like him a lot. He is Latino, really sweet guy. He's a painter. He does a lot of the coloring. He did a lot of coloring for Jolly, things like that. Big fan of his work. So this takes a bunch of little short stories and puts them all in this collection. This is about Conan going back home to his place up in the north and kind of the travels he goes through, meeting some of the old people. Oh, by the way, Frank Cho. Gotta love that Frank Cho drawing. Just brilliant stuff. So you got some Frank Cho a little in there. So he meets some of his old compatriots and old enemies, and it's told, and then there's these backstories of his grandfather, which I've never heard much about his lineage. And this is all by Corman, Richard Corbin. And so I thought this was like way cool to get some of his stuff. And Richard Corbin has such an interesting style. It really is this mix of a very cartoonish style with also exaggerated anatomy and some realism. I don't really understand. It's a strange hybrid. I can't really pinpoint it, but the faces and things get a very cartoonish, exaggerated way, but yet also the positioning anatomy is very detailed. It's just kind of a neat thing. So we learn about his grandfather, some of the things some of these little like short stories of meeting these werewolf boys and dealing with that. There's another Frank Cho. Don't you love that? It's like so good, dude. So it goes back and forth between grandfather and his story. Of course, there's some parallelisms there. This is a great panel there too. And that's really it. That's all. Whoa, this thing's like breaking apart as I talk about it. The binding on these books sometimes is lacking. I'm a fan of this stuff. If you like these kind of, again, swords and sandals, sand and sandals stories, I say Conan's great. I started in the beginning, but even this stuff it holds up. I think the art is great. You got Corbin in here, which is really nice to have because you don't get a lot of that much. So I find that it's one of the books I keep and I get. So I'm a little picky on stuff, but I'm a fan of it. And when I say check these, look at that, just freaking broke just now. Look at that. You guys saw it live. Look at that. I'm going to re-glue it. Cheap freaking Dark Horse. I just got through saying how good it is. Now I'm like, cheap production. I never really had that happen before, but I'll get that fixed. Anyway, there you go, guys. Quick little video. Thanks for watching. I care about you guys. Thank you so much for watching, for subscribing. I'm doing this because people like comics, like me, and I appreciate it. So thanks a lot. Have a good one, guys. Bye.